Trying to stop a child's tantrum with your own tantrum is like throwing gasoline on a fire. It just makes it worse. You're listening to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, episode 30.
Welcome to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, providing parents all around the world with valuable knowledge to help with the biggies of family life. Here's your host, a registered play therapist, education specialist, parent coach, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Hi there, Jackie Flynn here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Parenting in the Rain podcast. Well, at the time of this recording, we are about 3 weeks away, maybe 2.5 weeks away from the end of summer. Then school starts. It's been a great summer. I've had a lot of trainings this summer. Just recently, I had an EMDR training that taught me how to administer EMDR in a group setting and very specific to recent traumatic events. And that was in response to the tragedy in Orlando, Florida at the Pulse nightclub. So a lot of, I believe it was like 700 therapists in the area volunteered to support the people. It was just beautiful. Such a horrible tragedy, but the response to that and the people around it's just amazing. So yesterday I just completed the level 1 of Gottman's method couples therapy. Oh my goodness, absolutely amazing. If you're in need of marital therapy, couples therapy, that is the type of therapy to get. It's called Gottman method couples therapy. Absolutely phenomenal, all based on research, very intentional. I love the way it's done, and it's done for really long-term impact, long-term change. It's changed the way that I interact, even though I only just finished up the training yesterday. But really, my whole concept of interacting with people around me, as well as in my couple relationship with my husband, it's good stuff. All right, so what we're going to talk about today on the podcast is the difference between tantrums and meltdowns. They're different. It's important to differentiate between the two because it really helps guide our response as parents, because you don't respond to both of them the same way because it's not efficient. Knowing that tantrums are the result of a child really just trying to get something, and meltdowns are usually a reaction to overstimulation. Could be sensory, like auditory, visual, it could be social, too many people around, or it could be just lots and lots of stress, lots of stuff going on in one's mind. So I'm going to talk about both of these, tantrums and meltdowns, in regards to children, but they can certainly happen with adults as well. And you may be able to really relate to this firsthand. As people, as human beings, we all are subject to emotional flooding. It's just when we're flooded with emotions, things seem so very intense. And I get that term, I already knew that term from EMDR therapy, but that term came up again in my Gottman method couples therapy. And one of the things that they do during that therapy is have the clients wear one of those things on their finger, those pulsometers, I think that's the name of it, and really just kind of monitor if one of the partners' heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute. And if it does, then you have them stop and self-soothe. So, and I love that phrase, self-soothe, too, because it's really useful in helping your kiddos kind of calm down. So when we're looking at tantrums versus meltdowns, we're going to really look at what are the causes, what triggers them, what are some body signals that shows up. So, because eventually we want to kind of notice what goes on beforehand so that you can really kind of situate your life in a way that helps everybody be happier. So I want to kind of refer back to Dr. Dan Siegel's work a minute. He says to name something is to name it is to tame it. So when we have both anything with kiddos, we're trying to really help them build up their emotional literacy. That can help them kind of have a word to represent a really big feeling that's showing up in their body. And that does something in the brain. That helps in itself just calm it down and make it more manageable and not so consuming. So both of these things, you'll want to really identify the emotion that's showing up. You feel angry because this, or you feel really overwhelmed because of that. And remember, with kids, less is more. You don't want to get into lecture mode. Lecture mode actually is overstimulating in itself, and that can make things worse. So let's go back to tantrums and meltdown. And just by the way, a tantrum can cause a meltdown. So a tantrum is really when the kid is trying to get something, trying to get a toy, a candy bar, trying to get attention. It doesn't necessarily have to be tangible. A meltdown, on the other hand, is often just sensory overstimulation, just having too much going on, whether it's sound, sight, too many people, too much going on. And it could be that it's too much going on in their head, there's so much stress, so much pressure. That can cause a meltdown as well. And we see meltdowns a lot of times with kids with autism spectrum disorder. They are more prone to those meltdowns, and really knowing how to respond and to prevent. Prevention isn't worth an ounce of cure, right? So knowing how to prevent, but when they come up, knowing how to respond in a way that can really help it to de-escalate as quickly as possible is really good stuff. So a tantrum is based in an attempt of somebody trying to get something. So it's important to know that tantrums aren't exclusive to kids, right? So adults can have tantrums too. And as I said in the beginning, having a tantrum doesn't solve a tantrum. So as adults, if we start yelling and screaming and get really upset, we're going to do nothing but kind of escalate it or scare our children in a way that they may appear quiet on the surface, but the inside is feeling that fear. And when a kid feels fear, it really kind of does something confusing in the brain. And when there are children, it can mess up that attachment piece, because it really sends that mixed message, right? It sends that message of, okay, this is a person that I go to for my safety, my security, my love, my needs, all of this. This is my parent, that beautiful child-parent connection. But this is also a person that represents fear, and I'm kind of getting into the piece of just that intensity. So I'm not speaking to like anytime that you've ever yelled at your kids. I've yelled at my kids before, and I really go back to that Maya Angelou's quote, when you know better, you do better. And I definitely feel that to be true, because yelling can be very scary. It can be ineffective, and in reality, it's like tantrum-like behavior. So when your child is acting up, you'll want to make sure that you really remain calm. Be that thermostat that regulates the temperature rather than the thermometer that heats up with the situation. So a tantrum can't solve a tantrum. And tantrums are behaviorally based, of course. Any type of behavior is behaviorally based, but some really kind of can be a result of impulsivity. So it could be something that happens more frequently in kids with attention deficit disorder or autism spectrum disorder. So we're going to make sure that we're really differentiating these terms, tantrum and meltdown, so that you understand they're not synonyms, because if you think they're the same, then you may be tempted to respond to them the same way. So that's the purpose of really kind of differentiating those two. But know that a tantrum can be so overstimulating that it can lead into a meltdown. So a tantrum could be the result of if a child just wants something like a toy and then they're told no. It could be a conscious or unconscious effort to try to get that or to get attention or whatever. It doesn't have to be tangible. It can really bring up really intense emotions over issues that is just seeking something. And if you really, and this isn't recommended, but if you really think about, okay, if they're desiring this, like a candy bar, and you give them the candy bar and they stop, then that means it's a tantrum. But you don't want to get into that behavior or that response, because if they act a certain way and then you reinforce it with that, then you're kind of teaching them, okay, that's the way you get things. So there's a much more effective and efficient and a better way to respond to it. Now, tantrums usually involve yelling and crying and kicking and screaming, but it also looks a lot like a meltdown to the untrained eye. Now, when you look at a tantrum and a meltdown, one of the biggest differences is going to be that covering of the ears. If it's auditory meltdown, the child can look like they're just shutting down. And that's when, if they get something, they're still going to be having that same behavior because they're really just overstimulated. Now, a child can usually control the tantrum. Now, they may have limitations due to that emotional flooding, but usually it's controllable. And tantrums are apt to stop when the child either gets what they want or they realize that it's ineffective and unlikely to just produce what they want. So that's the key, is not let that work for them. But remember, to name it is to tame it. You feel really upset. You really want whatever it is. And then you could go into that verbiage that we learned through child-parent relationship therapy. If you choose to continue yelling, then you're choosing, so that cause and effect, whatever it is that you want it to be the consequence. And you'll want to make it related to it. So if you choose to continue yelling in the store, then you're choosing not to have your friend over tonight. So making it related consequences sometimes difficult. And know that you get pretty much, in most cases, the same result with a small consequence as you would a large one. Sometimes it's tempted to say, okay, you're never going to watch TV again for the rest of the year if you continue this. And notice when you go to those extremes, it could be a sign that you're experiencing emotional flooding as well. So let's kind of switch gears and go into the characteristics of a meltdown. And we touched on this a little bit already. It's just that reaction of feeling overwhelmed, usually due to sensory overload. That's just too much sensory information at once. Auditory, visual, that tactile. It could be that the water feels really upsetting, or being in a crowded place is really upsetting. Now, it does look like a tantrum with the exception of those body signals such as holding ears or not stopping to communicate. A lot of times with tantrums, if somebody's not watching them while they're acting out, they'll get louder in an attempt of trying to get their attention. But eventually, it'll calm down if it's ineffective. And supermarkets are famous for causing sensory meltdowns. The brain just goes into overload. That fight, flight, or fear response may set in. And that you may have heard of that before, that fight, flight, or fear response, or not fear, freeze. That fight, flight, or freeze response can set in. And that's just our body's alarm system. It really kind of I'm reading this amazing book called The Body That Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Oh my goodness, that book is incredible. But when he talks about the body's alarm system, the amygdala and the hippocampus and all those brain parts that sound super complicated, but he breaks them down in a way that's super easy to understand. He kind of references that metaphor of the smoke alarm. Like, we used to live on a sailboat. Right? It was an interesting life, but every time I would cook, the smoke alarm would go off. Even I'm just making a grilled cheese, the smoke alarm would go off. So it was so frustrating. But now that we live in a house, when I cook, the smoke alarm only goes off when like something's burning or something. It's just like it should go off. So when people go into that fight, flight, or freeze response, it's their alarm system is going off too easily, kind of like that the smoke alarm that goes off with just a little bit of smoke or too close to it. So just knowing that that child, that person has active alarm system can really help you gauge, hey, maybe we should do our grocery shopping when it's not as crowded, or maybe I'll go grocery shopping after my spouse gets home, or when they're playing with a friend, and then I'll watch my friend's kids while she goes grocery shopping. Kind of working it out that way can really make a difference and kind of keep everybody happier. But know that you don't necessarily have to live that way all the time. You can build that mindful muscle through mindfulness. And you may have listened to Robert Cox's episode on this podcast where he talks about using mindfulness as a treatment approach for kids with autism spectrum disorder. I use mindfulness in every session that I have with clients because it really helps them not only during session, really kind of pull everything together and be able to focus and calm, but it builds that muscle, kind of like exercising. You don't get the benefits just while you're running. You build those muscles and then it's easier to run later. That's how that works. So using mindfulness with kids can actually help them to calm down quicker, and then you may see less meltdowns after that. So I don't know if you've checked out episode 23 with Lindsay Bill yet. Oh, she's amazing. She's that occupational therapist from Manhattan, New York. And she talks to us about sensory processing disorder. If you haven't checked that out, I totally recommend that. So know that a child will often stop a tantrum if they get what they want, like the candy bar, the toy, the attention, whatever it is that they want. Or if your child's rewarded for that desirable behavior, such as, okay, if you choose to use your words and tell me what's going on for you, then you're choosing to be able to. So really kind of being able to connect and be able to choose an alternate behavior, that can help with the tantrums too. So it is really important, though, with tantrums to resist that urge to give in and just give them what they want, because it reinforces it. You want to take that opportunity as like a teachable moment to teach your child that outbursts aren't the way to get the things that they want in life. And you can certainly say that explicitly, like those words, but it's so much more helpful to say it like really quick and to let that situation teach them. You want to pull in empathy too across the board. Bruce Perry has an amazing book on empathy that can help you connect in the way. Say, you really want that. You feel sad. That must be tough to want a toy right now and you can't get it. And I totally understand. So in a real nice, loving way, connect with your child. You're going to get more calm down too if they feel like, hey, this person cares about me, not necessarily giving me exactly what I want, but they care. You can go a long way with that. So a meltdown is different, right? So meltdown isn't about trying to get something, and a meltdown isn't necessarily going to stop when the child gets something. So you could say, okay, if you stop crying right now, we can do this. That isn't going to stop. A lot of times the child in a meltdown, their prefrontal cortex is offline in their brain, and they're not really consuming the information that you say anyway. So if you go into lecture mode, you can be that overstimulation. You could even be escalating their meltdown even further. So lecture mode, not only is it not helpful, it can absolutely make it worse. In the child-parent relationship therapy, they talk about how like 10 words or less, and really that's age developmentally speaking. You'll want to see what's right for your child, but going on and on and on about something doesn't make them hear it more or understand it more clearly. It could actually do the opposite effect. I like to use the metaphor of a cookbook. So you have this cookbook, this big giant cookbook, and somebody says, hey, I would like the recipe for Boston cream pie. Doesn't that sound delicious? My mouth just watered when I talked about that. But if you give them, like, you have this big, giant book on all these amazing recipes, and you say, okay, here's the recipe. But they may not want to read that entire book or look through it or do that much effort, especially if they're wanting it. It's like an emergency. They're wanting it, like that emergency moment. They may just want the recipe to Boston cream pie. So it would be way more helpful just to give them that one recipe. That's the way it is with kids. Just give them the information they need and then quiet down and let them process it. Too much is definitely not helpful. Less is more. And that lecture mode can really kind of be overstimulating in itself for both you and your child. So how do you handle tantrums and meltdowns differently? So for tantrums, you'll want to make sure that you make it clear that you want to name it to tame it, connect with the child, recognize their emotion, validate that emotion. You're feeling blank. You really want blank. But if you choose this, you're choosing that. And really kind of keeping your cool so that they still connect with you. The moment that you go into tantrum mode, they're missing your message altogether. So you'll want to self-soothe. Take those deep breaths, 4 seconds inhale, hold 2 seconds, and 4 seconds exhale while it's happening. And it can help you respond in a calmer, just more empathetic way. And that's where you're really going to get your results. Okay, so that's for a tantrum. Now for a meltdown, you'll want to think, okay, what is overstimulating about my child? Do you really go into problem-solving mode here? What's overstimulating, and how can I reduce that overstimulation to help de-escalate? And know that it's not like a light switch. So you're in the grocery store, it's real noisy, real busy. You may think, okay, I'm going to take my child out to the car and we're going to calm down. So you get to the car and your child's still upset. Well, it takes time. It's like that snow globe that you shake up. Those things the snowflakes aren't going to fall right away, although they do in some. But in my office, I have this glass snow globe with like glycerin in there. They fall slower. So that's the way your child's going to calm down. Some children calm down quickly and some not so much. But definitely as you practice mindfulness, you'll see that improve. But, I say definitely, hopefully, that's something that a therapist can help people with as well. But notice that when you go out to that car, you still need to be calm. And that's where self-soothing yourself is going to help you not be part of the problem by getting upset. And that verbiage to your child may sound like, we're going out to the car now. It's quiet there. And I'm going to turn on the air conditioner so that we're both cool and comfortable and you can calm. So it may look pretty chaotic going out, and really kind of resist the urge to lecture or talk too much. And don't really, well, I don't want to say don't because it's something that often can't be helped, but really know that people that stare and look at you with a judgmental eye, they don't really know what it's like to be you. They don't know what that situation is like. So kind of imagine that I'm going to go out to my car and we're just going to focus on calming down. And it's important to know the difference of tantrums and meltdowns. I hope that this podcast episode really helped you with that differentiation, because I really want you to be able to, in the moment, spot out, okay, this is a tantrum and this is a meltdown, and how do I respond to what we're having right now and help make our situation better. And as your child grows and develops, often that behavior will decrease, but also as they have that successful calm down, then you're actually teaching them strategies. So it's really, when you have those episodes, just think, okay, this is an opportunity to learn. It's important to know the difference and to know the difference response. All right, well, if you would like the show notes to this episode, feel free to visit parentingintherain.com, and also you can join our Facebook group, Parenting in the Rain Community. I love it in there. People are so wonderful. So go ahead and search Parenting in the Rain Community in Facebook, and you could request to join. I also have a Facebook page, so you can like that page, and I update that as well. And I'm planning some courses coming up. So I'm planning a course on creating a play therapy practice, since I have a private practice myself and really learned a lot along the way. So I plan on sharing that with the world too. I'm super excited about it. Well, I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you're having a great day, and I hope this information helped you in some way. Be sure to tell your friends or anybody who you feel like could benefit from this podcast. Please share this information. I want to be able to get this free resource out to as many people as possible. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, take care.